Okay. All right, everyone, welcome to practice today. Um, I'm Lama Rod, and welcome to those of you who are new. Joining us for the first time, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, as I see people are already doing. Um, so wonderful. In a couple of minutes, you can start posting, or anytime, really start posting prayer requests as we get our practice started, things that we can offer in our prayers. Okay. Um, so again, welcome everyone. We're gonna get started with practice in just a few moments, sooner than later. I think just giving people time to come into the room as well. Okay. Let's see. All right. If you have any questions, you can post those and ask a question, um, which should be uh, at the bottom of your screen. You can start putting questions in right now if you want. Let's just reading through some of the comments. So just to remind everyone about upcoming retreats, I have a retreat in August 17th, a weekend retreat up at Wonderwell Retreat Center, which is New Hampshire. And I think that registration is live. You can go to naturaldharma.org to sign up. I think there's also going to be an online streaming component as well. So it looks like you'll be able to do online streaming as well. So check that out. Also, we'll be at Southern Dharma outside of Asheville, North Carolina in December. So take a look at that. There's one more thing, in-person thing, definitely coming up, and we'll make an announcement about that once that has been planned and finalized as well. And I also will be doing like a 1 day online practice for Medicine Buddha, which I hope to do in July as well. And you'll get the dates for that as well. Okay. Also in the fall, in October, I'll be doing an introduction to Mahamudra course, probably about an 8-week course. And so that's going to be open to anyone. And so that's an introduction to meditation as well. So for those of you who have been really looking for some support in beginning a practice, we'll be doing that this fall. And then the beginning meditation practices will lead us into Mahamudra, an introduction to Mahamudra as well. So that's all online, and so that will be a great opportunity. It's just an extension of what we do in Bhumiswasha Mahamudra for the people. It won't be called Mahamudra for the people. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. But those are just some opportunities that are coming up. And, we're still thinking about doing something here in Atlanta as well. Um, so for those of you who are local or in the South, so stay tuned. Tonight for our practice, I think I want to continue kind of exploring parts of our practice from last week. So again, we were talking about really transmission, empowerment. How do we feel authorized to practice with the deity? And of course, I have this kind of transcendentalist approach to all of this, which is that basically you are the deity. So why do you need permission to be yourself? So we're going to continue that because the problem with that is that we just don't believe enough in our own innate, awakened nature. We don't believe it's true. We have a lot of doubts around it. That's what creates the conditions for empowerment to come about, because we need someone to tell us that it's okay to do something. And in a way, that's really important. But in other ways, we become too dependent on the permission of others to express agency in something that is inherently ours to touch and to experience. So we're still going to be working with that. We're going to continue with Durga as well. Tonight with Durga, I want us to really get into the protection qualities of the Durga mantra. So when we, at the end, after we've done all the mantras, coming to the end of practice, we're just sitting, allowing that kind of blue light energy to radiate from the heart center. And I just, tonight I'm going to instruct you to experience that blue light as protection. It's like this blue light that begins to radiate as creating a barrier for you, So I have to actually, I'm wearing rubber bands right now. At this point in our orthodontist treatment, I have to wear these rubber bands to get some back teeth to close. My orthodontist got really mad at me today because I wasn't ever wearing them. So I was like, I don't like rubber bands in my mouth. I barely like metal in my mouth. So he wasn't happy. And so my treatment was extended with using these. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about right now, is it? So protection. So leaving the practice with this feeling of protection. We kind of need it right now, considering the weekend that we just had. I do believe the full eclipse was part of so much of what was happening this weekend, because eclipse energy can be quite destabilizing for a lot of people. And so it's hard, tough energy to hold for a lot of people, because that doesn't excuse anything. Also, but I think a lot of us are just feeling really vulnerable, physically vulnerable, living in the world, as many of us have been feeling for a very long time, but also just emotionally vulnerable. We're emotionally just open and raw, right? And I think Durga mantra can be a really important tool in experiencing a feeling of protection and boundary. And then this is who Durga was, is, or rather, this is why in the story she was called into being, because there was this really intense, powerful demon that was out of control, and none of the deities could do anything, so they just kind of combined their aspirations and intentions and called into being an aspect of the mother who who could um, defeat, suppress this really powerful force that was creating a lot of chaos in the world. And that's always the root, even though this mantra is very much associated with healing, it's just as much associated with protection and subduing erratic energies, right? Um, and not that you can't do this with any mantra or with any wisdom deity or realized worldly deity, but you're only doing this you can only do this kind of practice with wisdom deities. Um, like the wisdom deities are the most powerful deities because they are just pure expressions uh, of emptiness and space itself, right? And there's nothing more powerful than the expression of the essence itself, the expression of the essence that transcends experiences of an ego or experiences of the binary. Um, so what you're doing is you're calling in really the truth, like the truth and the essence of things. Um, Everything is an illusion, even the ways that we struggle is an illusion, which is hard to connect to in the midst of struggling with everything that's happening, right? And we also have to believe that we deserve to be protected as well. We have to believe that we're worth protection. That we don't, that victimhood or being targeted isn't what is supposed to happen. Like that's even for those of us, and I would say, many of us in this space, in this session tonight, you know, have experienced being targeted and marginalized. Some of us consistently, perpetually marginalized, attacked in public. It's hard not to pathologize this personally, and it's hard to survive the ways in which dominant cultures attempt to pathologize some of us who are routinely victims of injustice. Of course, that pathologizing is just another way that dominant cultures, communities bypass their role in perpetuating violence against um, smaller groups, marginalized communities, which we see over and over again. You know, um, as I often say, this is a period. Well, it's always been a period, so of this happening, but like particularly now, I think it's important for us to explore how there is so much spiritual warfare happening right now, and that if we don't learn to recognize the spiritual warfare and disrupt that spiritual warfare, then we won't see the kinds of change we need to see in the relative world, the physical world of, you know, um, the world of the world that we experience through our sense faculties, right? The relative. Um, and we have to think about spiritual warfare. Um, so, and new saints, what when I'm saying, and I was kind of hesitant about this, but like I'm doing, well, I am doing it. I have done it. I have admit, that if you to be a real abolitionist, it doesn't matter if you're a prison abolitionist or defunding the police, you know, but a real abolitionist, a true authentic abolitionist, going to the roots of abolitionists, work here in this country, um, you you can't be an abolitionist if you don't have a spiritual practice. And so I'm just going to say that well, again, I have said it, and the world will see it next year. um, like if you're not praying, you're not practicing abolitionism. If you're not engaged in the spiritual warfare part of this, because the root of abolition work, like particularly anti-slavery abolition, and um, the early roots of abolition in this country was a spiritual movement, as much as it was a social movement, an organizing movement. It was a spiritual movement. The leaders of this movement were actually quite gifted mediums and psychics and diviners. That's how they did the work that they were able to do. You know, um, like it's so. I really encourage you to just read some of the histories around, um, Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, the Quakers, the radical Quakers, the spiritualists, um, who are all just kind of working together and supporting each other. Even the suffragists, too, to an extent, who were intersecting with abolitionists, organizing a movement. It was such a, um, it was just like, it was commonly accepted, you know, um, with the leaders that, of course, the unseen world is helping. The unseen world wants us to be free as well, you know. Of course, the early spiritualists were just kind of stumbling into this, because, beings in the spirit world, the unseen world, were trying to help, so they were just possessing, all these like people and just like trying to get them to send messages, into the living world, about, what people could be doing, to work towards freedom. So anyway, um, we have to kind of return to the framework of spiritual warfare right now, to really understand like the roots of what's happening. Um, but this is not just a social thing. It's not just injustice. There are forces, unseen forces, that are really, um, impacting things for us, right? So I'm sure some of you can feel this, just this kind of tension right now between, um, light and dark, right? And I know some of you don't like to think about that, but it doesn't really matter what we think, actually. Like this is what's happening because this is the relative. There's always the struggle between what is conducive to freedom and what isn't conducive to freedom. Of course, what is conducive to freedom is spaciousness, uh, recognition, emptiness, and so forth. What isn't conducive to freedom, is ignorance, delusion, right? Of course, that turns into hate and so forth. Um, so there are forces who are just standing on these different sides, right? And again, this is, some of you may say, oh, like, if the nature of everything is awakened, right? Why doesn't goodness just win, right? because this is the relative, this is samsara, what I call the carceral state, right? These are different rules here. Um, um, the carceral state is very personal. Samsara is very personal. Um, there's no one who can come along and just crash samsara. It's not, ooh, well, here we go. Here's the matrix. See, I knew it was going to come back at some point. We've gone too long without mentioning the matrix. So it's not like the matrix, you just can't crash the system and everyone's free, right? Even, well, you get freed and you go to the real world, and real world is not much better, as you're living underground. Um, but it's not that easy. You just can't crash the system, right? Of course, the matrix has the limitations because you're still in samsara. You're just in a deeper level of samsara, which I feel like that's really appropriate because there are different levels of freedom. We think we break through a level of freedom and we say, okay, that's it. Then we realize there's another layer of freedom to break through, right? It's just a continual breaking through till you're able to touch into the essence of things and you say, oh, this is what this is. Like you get the point, right? But we have to do individual work to transform, to change our relationship to the relative, to the carceral state. When we change our relationship, then we start experiencing freedom, right? And then we inspire others um, to change their relationship to samsara as well. So when we do this practice, it's not, yeah, we are doing this practice for ourselves, for others, for healing, for everything, but this is also um, part of how we're engaging, in the spiritual warfare. Like we're working, when we do these like visualizations of radiating light, we're becoming channels, portals really, that begin to channel light into the world. Like we become portals and we open to the light, and this light just comes into the world. That's what we're needing. That's part of the labor that we're doing. We're opening to the light and allowing that light to shine into the world right now. But there's always this, because this is the relative in samsara, one of the rules of samsara, of the program, of the matrix, is that there's always counterbalances as well. And as we offer great light into the world through practice, there's also this kind of trigger thing that happens where there's darkness that comes as well, if that makes sense. And so much of what we're trying to do is outpace the darkness. And the darkness is delusion, ignorance, not knowing, the opposite of wisdom and compassion. Like we're trying to outpace that, so each side is trying to overwhelm the other within the system, right? And you do that can happen because you believe it can happen. Samsara, the carceral state, is based on, it's a belief system, right? And what our freedom is actually based on no longer believing in the realness of the system, no longer believing that the things that we have to go through, we have to actually go through them. That there is a different choice to make, and that different choice is actually choosing what is conducive to awakening and enlightenment, which is compassion, love, and so forth, awareness, wisdom. Um, Yeah, there's so much that needs to be freed and liberated. Of course, this is the work of the Bodhisattva. Like there's so, there's a lot that needs to be done. There are beings that need to be freed, energies that need to be cleansed and purified, things that need to be healed. Um, and that's how we continue this kind of spiritual warfare. We go to where the pain is and we try to heal that pain, that trauma, really. You can't you can't really do this level of abolition work unless you believe. If you have to really, really believe that one can be free, not just free socially, but free ultimately. Like, because the ultimate freedom is what helps to offer the space for us to do the relative work. Like I can't do the work that I'm doing in terms of freedom if I don't believe and have experienced as well these experiences of ultimate freedom, right? Because if I don't have that ultimate freedom experience, then the relative becomes very rigid. It becomes very material, meaning real and solid with no potential, right? And when something's that real and solid, it's really hard to imagine change, right? And transformation, right? I mean, it's definitely hard to even think about the illusion of anything when you believe in the realness of everything, right? And that belief in the realness and the investment in the realness is um, can create a lot. Well, can be the foundation for a lot of violence against ourselves and against others. Right? When you believe there's nothing else, and that if there's nothing else, then what matters? What exactly matters, right? Um, you have to, I want you to begin to experience what freedom sounds like. When I say sound, I don't mean our hearing faculties, the sense faculty of hearing. And it's not that I'm not trying to listen for freedom. Listening, in this case, listening means experiencing, feeling, but to become sensitive to how the phenomenal world is trying to get us free, which is the core teaching of Mahamudra. That the world, the phenomenal world, is actually showing us that we're already free, but we don't know how to pay attention to that. So we take everything to be too real. Um, and it's hard for us to bust out of that. You're already free. And that's really Dharma as well, not just Mahamudra, Dharma in general, that we're already free. We just are trying to remember that. We're trying to remember that, and we remember it by learning to pay attention, you know, to the phenomenal world and to our experience, because there are cracks in our experience. You know, there are all these cracks we don't notice because we're not paying attention. We're not training ourselves in awareness. So it just seems like there's this like movie and narrative that's just going on without any breaks, but there's actually a lot of breaks in this. And if we can get into a break, then we can get into freedom. This is again just basic Mahamudra theory, right? And not Mahamudra, but the system of meditation, Buddha Dharma, is that we're trying to get in between the thoughts. Getting in between the thoughts is the crack, that we're trying to slip into in order to start really unraveling and peeling back the illusion of this realness, you know. You know, so I just finished the forward for Spring Washam's um, book on Harriet Tubman, which he completely channeled. One could argue that I channeled the forward as well. But it's going to be such an important book. It's coming out this year, um, this fall actually. So it's pretty quick. Um, but it's going to be such an important resource for us to really understand what abolition is, to understand how great bodhisattvas still work in the world, and particularly Harriet Tubman, Mother Harriet Tubman. I have a huge picture of her and on the mantle just above my head. Um, so she's always like sitting above me when I'm teaching from the seat. Um, a lot of books, are it's there's a lot of information I think about these great beings that can only be transmitted directly to people. Um, in meditative states like this. And so I think it's important to really understand, um, which is, I know this is like really hard for everyone. I know I just saw this. Um, I saw a comment about about how it's hard to wrap our minds around being free, and it is quite difficult. It's hard to wrap our minds around the totality of what is actually happening. There's more than just what I can see and hear and taste and experiences like this. There are countless things happening actually in this one moment. you know um, and to feel that is to like really experience hopefulness, hope. um, you know Hope. And there are a lot of beings touching this world. This isn't you know this isn't something that just happened. Like this apocalypse has been going on for much longer than we understand. you know um like centuries and centuries, but it's coming to a head now, right? So there have been beings in this world. The Buddha, for an example, was one of those great beings who came here to achieve awakening, to establish the system, just like many awakened beings came here to establish these systems of practice, you know, so that we can use them now. Um, to get free, right? To get free from believing, that we have to like continue to go through the suffering and the violence over and over again, that we can start making different choices. Right? So go ahead and get started. I know there are questions. I'm gonna come to the questions again at the end of practice. Any prayer requests, go ahead and put those up. Um, right. All right. Yeah, so when we choose abolition, we really have to choose, you have to choose this kind of, um, it's, if you, when you read Spring's book, like you see a lot, Harriet Tubman was a warrior, and she's a warrior, um, and her consciousness is still present, recruiting people. Um, like it's not happenstance or just like ironic that you know all of a sudden Harriet Tubman is like kind of back, in the collective consciousness with her movie a couple of years ago and her being on the $20 bill, and hearing so much about it. This is not like coincidence. Like this is like orchestrated. Like this is all there's no such thing as coincidence, you know, um, or whatever luck. There so much is orchestrated, right? So much has been planned. Um, that things are ripening and arising because of labor that has gone into the ripening well before it's ripened. So again, let's begin our practice just through a little bit of contemplation, and just so let's start with freedom. You let's just start at the top, right? And what does freedom mean for us? Yeah, I mean, what is freedom? And I explore these different levels of freedom, right? What does it mean to be free in the world? What does it mean to be free in our minds? What does it mean to be free in the absolutes? You know, And in stillness, we can begin to sense, to hear this kind of state of freedom. But we keep getting distracted by anxiety and worry and fear. We also get distracted by joy and happiness as well. And the reasons we get so distracted by everything that arises because we actually struggle to hold space for everything that arises. By learning to notice and to not react, and how that opens the door for experience. And experience is the path to freedom. I can't get free from something I don't experience. So freedom isn't about going anywhere. Just like dying isn't about going anywhere. Enlightenment isn't going anywhere. Like it's just right here. Like it's here. It's in this moment. It's in this second. Like I just need to like remember that. I'm not trying to bust out of the world, or I'm not trying to bust out of the matrix or the carceral state. I'm just trying to like finally see and experience the illusion. I can just do it right now. Or I can start practicing doing that right now. And if you fall into that state, into that level of seeing, like I have said before, it's like the magic eye books, right? It's learning how to adjust our vision. Again, vision is not sense faculties, like it's perception, intuition, the hearing, the seeing, the things that these like, kind of physical words, sensory words are just really languages coming from trying to evoke our experience of intuition, the knowingness, our perception, our knowingness, the ways in which we experience clarity and experiencing that clarity begin to see much more of what's happening, right? Because we're not distracted by everything that's arising on the sense faculty levels. We're getting deeper into intuition and perception that experiences everything, experiences the truth of everything. And in this space, the consciousness of Medicine Buddha can arise. Right? Because there are two ways, perhaps even more, but what's coming to mind is two ways to touch into the nature of enlightened beings, the consciousness of enlightened beings, rather. First is that we train in holding space, right? And in holding space, we connect to space, and the space is the consciousness of the deity. And the second way that I'm thinking of now is that we begin to understand that everything is the arising of the deity to begin with, because everything is an expression of emptiness and space itself. Right? And so, with these doorways into the deity, which one is accessible for us? So, we'll begin with our first mantra. This is the opening mantra, really evoking the energy of Medicine Buddha. Om Minla Sange Kino Soha. You see that in the chat box. Om Minla Sange Kino Soha, which is just a prayer to Medicine Buddha to really be here, really. Kino means to think of in Tibetan, but it's really about summoning and awakening the consciousness, this enlightened consciousness of Medicine Buddha right now in the space that we're opening up to. So we'll begin. We're going to chant this a couple of times, okay? Minla Sange Kino Soha. Right? Om Minla Sange Kino Soha. Om Minla Sange Kino Soha. Om Minla Sange Kino Soha. I'm beginning to trust that Medicine Buddha is awakening in our space, not just in the space, also in our bodies. And even for a couple of moments, just beginning to tell yourself that you are Medicine Buddha, right? Or just telling yourself, I am. I am the expression of Medicine Buddha. I am the great healer. I am awakened. That I am the most profound integration of compassion and wisdom. And that because of my awakening and my innate Buddhahood, that I can consume the world in compassion and care and wisdom and love instead of the world constantly consuming me with anxiety, fear, violence. That the nature of my body, my mind, my speech, everything is an expression of profound, boundless, orderless emptiness, energy, space. That this sense of ego, this sense of self is only a thought. Just sitting with that thought just for a moment. And then I wonder in this moment if you can turn your attention to really just the experiences, the energies, the consciousness of these great awakened bodhisattvas that are with us. And you don't have to know particularly who. Maybe you can focus on Harriet Tubman or whomever feels closest to you, or a saint. If you're close to saints, um, or a bodhisattva from the Buddhist tradition, whomever. But trusting that this connection that we've made with the consciousness of Medicine Buddha actually triggers, awakens this experience of light and protection that actually tunes us in to frequencies of enlightened beings, compassionate, loving beings, not darker energies. And to trust that the retinue of Medicine Buddha, those worldly beings who are trying to help, who are motivated by love and compassion and liberation, who are joining and have joined the retinue of Medicine Buddha, that they have gathered as well to protect our space and to protect our practice. And we can just open to these frequencies of freedom, light, spaciousness, fluidity. And you don't have to necessarily try to do anything, but you can just simply think, I open to light. I open to any being, any energy that wants all beings to be free, and cared for, and safe, and happy. And maybe when you open, maybe you'll have visualization of being filled with light. You don't have to, but maybe you'll have that visualization. Or you may have a feeling of openness, space, fluidity. And you may not experience any of this, and everything is okay in this moment. So in my practice, what I just intuitively began to imagine is just like being filled with light. It also helps aesthetically to have a big ring light in front of me, as well, helping that experience. But being filled with light, the light of clarity, love, compassion, kindness, safety, care, whatever. Now, as some of you float away, try to turn your attention for a moment to the earth, to the seat, asking the consciousness of the earth, the energy of the earth to hold you as well. Right? So the earth becomes an anchor for opening to this space and fluidity. And that we begin to imagine from the space everything that we struggle with personally, or things that we're struggling with in our communities or families, or everything that we're struggling with in the world right now. And all the beings that feel as if they're consumed by ignorance and the darkness. That we begin to send this energy, to express this energy of light and clarity into those situations. So all this darkness begins to be cleared away and replaced by illumination, clarity, and all the hate that is dissolved in this light, all the despair and hopelessness and sorrow and fear are all dissolved in this light of clarity, this light which is so much of the energy that we're channeling from these awakened beings here to offer us support. So we're opening again to the energies of these beings, filling ourselves up, and then imagining radiating this energy out into the darkness. So we also become like Tara and Tarama, who herself is compared to a star, whose name does mean star. The northern star, the guiding star, the central symbol, right, within anti-slavery abolition, the guiding star, the northern star, that guided people to freedom. You are becoming that star right now. That no darkness can possibly dwell in you. And we're offering our minds and bodies to the love and care of awakened beings. And then continuing with that visualization, we'll slowly, in just a minute, transition into our main mantra. So Tea Taum Baconze, Maha Baconze, Rasa Sumangate, Soha, prayer to medicine Buddha for healing. And we're going to go through our first round of the mantra and just continuing with wherever you are in this meditation. We're really focusing on just being filled with light. You can chant or you can sit and listen, either is fine. All right. So we'll begin. 我谁呀？长对人谁被人谁马被人 raza sumungates oa. 제아성 백연세 백연세 마백연세 라스수문간테소아 제아성 백연세 백연세 마백연세 라스수문간테소아 대아자옴 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 백연세 백연세 Beata Om Begenze, Begenze, Ma Begenze, Lazuma 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 And we'll begin to kind of turn our attention to our prayer requests. As I read the prayer request, just imagine that you're radiating light into the prayers, into the lives of those we're offering prayers for. And as always, we just make a special kind of call, just like, just to feel better, just to know that all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas are really present. So we call into our spaces all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dharma protectors, all benevolent ancestors, all the local guides and deities of the land. We call into the space the consciousness of all the elements, including the earth, all saints, angels, guiding, guarding, protecting spirits and energies. We call in all the good, virtue, light in the world to hold these prayers. And as we offer these prayers, asking that you great beings, work on our behalf to bring about what we most need to happen for ourselves and for others. We're offering prayers for the community in Buffalo and for all those across the country who were victims of gun violence. We're offering prayers um, for my young student whose dad died of COVID and who needs comfort and support. Prayers for my own care and for the care of all. And offering prayers that all beings have an easeful transition into the bardo, praying that they have everything that they need in order to continue this path of freedom and liberation. Offering prayers for Art and Yunji, who are becoming exhausted working so hard with those who are suffering in the hospitals. Offering prayers for my son who is living with mental illness, and for me to remain patient and loving. Offering prayers for big work event I have tomorrow. May it go smoothly. Offering prayers for my mom who is mourning the loss of her cat. I'm offering prayers um, for Pete, for Peter, the cat who transitioned earlier today. Offering prayers for all of humanity who are so diminished by the smallness, the deadness that permeates. Offering prayers for my father, mother, and brother, and for the music and art they are birthing into the world this week. Offering prayers for Patricia Dalish dealing with cancer. Offering prayers for all of those who lost loved ones in Buffalo, the Buffalo shooting, and all those who lost loved ones to gun violence each year in this country. Offering prayers for Denise, who is facing several health crises at once, including cancer surgery. Healing prayers for my daughter, Hollister, having exhausting endocrine problems, and her husband as they deal with caring for their special needs young children. Offering prayers for all of our teachers, giving so much right now to support young people. Again, offering prayers for those in Buffalo, offering prayers for my mentor Raul, who died on Saturday. Offering prayers for my brother Kent and my mother Carol. Their death anniversaries are this week. May they be free from suffering and be protected wherever they are. I also offer prayers for Sherry, whose death anniversary was yesterday, and she continue to be supported and guided in the bardo. Offering prayers for the victims of continued gun violence and white delusional supremacy, prayers for my mom and brother who have COVID, and prayers that we may all practice like warriors, that we may all awaken as soon as possible. Offering prayer for all those who have lost loved ones to violence. Offering prayers for my friend Catherine Rose, whose father entered the bardo on Saturday. Offering prayers for all victims of the shootings this weekend in Buffalo, and several others too. Offering prayers present for transition for my friend Lou, who just passed on Friday. Offering prayer requests for Rachel Patipada and a long and painful healing with knee surgery. Offering prayers for healing of the injury I unintentionally caused earlier today. Offering prayers for Janine Wiseman and Eleanor Smith, both having upcoming surgeries on Friday and Saturday. Offering prayers for Wes waiting for top surgery date. And prayers for those who are suffering through chemotherapy and cancer. Offering prayers for everyone in office and seeking office to be able to sustain the terrible pressures of this time. Prayers for everyone in the situation in Ukraine and Russia and surroundings. And just in case there are prayers I haven't been able to notice, I offer those prayers as well. And all the unspoken prayers that remain unarticulated in our hearts, in our minds and bodies. Offer these prayers and all prayers offered tonight to the liberation of all sentient beings, that we all may be freed from cycles of violence, of suffering, that we all have access to the resources we need to be well, happy, and healthy. And we all belong to communities that support us and to love us and that loves us. And that we all those here in this space are able to get what we need in order to continue this work of freedom work for ourselves and for all those around us. That we all achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. So returning back to the mantra, just for a couple of minutes, just allowing energy, this light, this healing just to radiate out into the world. Imagine that all of us together, even though we can't see each other and we're all over the country and in different countries, that we imagine that our lights are collecting together and that we create this tremendous expression of light out into the delusion and darkness of this world that we're struggling with right now. That our collective practice begins to light the way to freedom for as many beings as possible. gate soa. Deata beyenze, beyenze, ma beyenze, asumugate 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 soa. Deata beyenze, Beganze, Mahabeganze, Raza Sumungate Sua. So shifting your attention now and touching back to the earth, maybe noticing the weight of the body making contact with your seat. And just allowing yourself to just really come back into this moment, to this time frame. And still imagining that we're still filled with this light. You begin to slowly transition into our Durga mantra. And as we chant, beginning to imagine that this light transforms. If it's been a white light, that it begins to just take on the hue of blue, like blue light. And this is, again, this blue and this blue light represents the nature of mind, the quality of awareness. It's also a settling, energetic color for us as we begin to close our session tonight. So Dum Durgaye Namaha. It's beginning to open our minds, our hearts to the expression of the mother, which is the expression of space itself. And turning our attention to the first syllable here, the syllable that arises directly out of the essence itself. The syllable is sound at the heart of all phenomena. The syllable of creation. In the Bible, in Genesis, it begins with, in the beginning there was the Word. And this was the Word. So beginning the mantra just by chanting and then we'll go into the mantra together. Okay? Just chant it as long as you can, or as long as I am. And then we'll go into the mantra. Okay? And just taking a deep breath in. Dum Dagaye Namaha. 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 Duraye Namaha. Om Dum 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 Duraye Namaha. Om Duraye Namaha. Om Duraye Namaha. Om Duraye Namaha. Om Dum 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 Duraye Namaha. Om Duraye Namaha. Om Dum 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 Duraye Namaha. And settling back down into the seat, letting the seat catch you, letting the earth catch you, surrendering everything that we may still be struggling with down to the earth to hold. That through the blessing of the Mother, of Durga Ma, that we end our session with protection and guidance and clarity as we continue to do the work of getting free. Turning our attention now to Shantideva's prayer, reciting it 3 times, close out our session together as a dedication of merit. I'm reciting it 3 times. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine. May I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your practice. Next week, we won't have practice. There will be no practice this week. But as always, um, there's practices that you can go back and watch on this platform. And we'll come back in June to continue practice together. So I'll talk to Eric to send out an email for Bumi Sparsha for next week as well. Okay. Let's see. Well, I don't know if I have time to really do all the questions. Um, let's see. I'll just take a few minutes to look at the questions here. How does joy coexist alongside grief and our anger about the Buffalo mass murders of Black people? I think this is related to the second question here. This practice has been maybe a point of healing for me. With the shootings in Buffalo, I'm feeling legit fear about going to the grocery store. Are there any practices you would recommend working with this? Um, um, so I think I'm just going to have to just focus on these 2 questions, I think. Um, well, the truth is that everything coexists already. Joy and fear actually happening right now at the same time. Um, so much of this practice is having to choose joy, but it's harder to choose joy when we actually are not touching into the nature of things, right? So, as I've said always before, it's like every answer about every question that we have about Buddha Dharma often just points right back to our experience of emptiness, right? We struggle to know the nature of things, or we struggle to be in the world in a way that feels spacious and open, and even in the face of so much violence, because we still haven't grounded in an experience of the ultimate nature of things. You know, the ultimate nature of our minds, the ultimate nature of all phenomena, which is all the same nature. Um, because the grief seems so, um, it seems so overwhelming for us because we're actually not experiencing the grief. Um, there's a lot of subtle, but it's subtle. It was also really intense, like pushing away and pulling away and avoiding and bypassing, but wanting to be there, and it just creates actually more suffering. You know, what would it mean to just allow grief to have its way? I know we get scared when we hear that language because we're like, well, if I let it have its way, then this is going to happen. Things happen because we continue to react to it. When I say let grief have its way, I say let grief just be there, right? Let grief be there. Let the loss, the fear, the sadness just be there. And then you turn your attention, well, you not just turn your attention, but you ask for support from everything that we practice with from the earth, from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, from our ancestors, right? And we ask these beings, these energies to help hold the grief that we feel as if it's too much for us, right? And again, it comes from our own disbelief that the grief is actually just an expression of our minds. The grief isn't something separate or unique, it's just an expression of the emptiness, the awareness of my mind. You know? Like as long as you haven't found the crack in the carceral states, like you'll still continue to believe in the carceral state. What's a really good example here? Um, it's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like everyone in the story believed that the wizard was all powerful and unstoppable and invincible and all powerful until they began, well, Dorothy came along and began to see the cracks in everything. Um, and begin to say, oh, like you're not what I thought you were. And this is the exact same experience we begin to have with samsara at the carceral state. When you find that crack and you're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. Like this is just this illusion that's happening that I've been buying into. And that's the point where freedom begins to awaken. And you begin to move the world, not through contraction, but through an expansive or more expansive kind of fluidity and movement, that everything that arises, you now have the space to hold, you know. And so for the trauma, right, that comes from this, the PTSD, where we're like, okay, now I can't go. It's just like when I was, when Trayvon Martin was killed, was murdered, and and I refused to wear a hoodie. Like I was like, I cannot wear a hoodie anymore because Trayvon Martin was killed in a hoodie, and that was part of like that justification because he looked dangerous in his hoodie. And I was like, oh, I'm never wearing a hoodie again because, and I've gone through that so many times with so many different things, with the police, with going certain places, or, just like over and over again. And then I had to get to this point where it was like I had to ask myself, what am I protecting? You know, what am I holding on to? And what I began to see was that, like, ultimately I was just afraid of dying. Like, I was afraid of dying, right? And I had to go and deal with that in practice. I had to go and sit with death and dying over and over and over again, because that's what I was protecting. And once I got to this place where I was like, wait, I'm not, I'm more than this. I'm more than just this body. I'm more than just this life. Like, this body, this life, how I'm manifesting in this moment, in this realm, and the relative is the least part of me, actually. You know, like, this is like the least interesting part of who I am, right? I think that this contraction, this being squeezed into this body and this life and this illusion is who I am. And I was terrified to consider that I was actually space itself, and what that meant for me, and how that, when I really embodied that, what that began to mean, that, like, I just lost a lot of fear, you know, like, if I end up being killed, right, in a shooting or by the police or any other way, through disease, through accident, whatever it may be, then it's okay. Like, this isn't the totality of who I am. Um, when we talk about offering everything to the feet of the mother, which I often talk about, and also to the feet of Medicine Buddha, like, that also means my life and my body. When I come to the end, I will freely offer my life into emptiness itself. Because that's where it came from, was from emptiness. I mean, that's the work that most of you have yet to do. I know you're working on it, but you're gonna have to do something about death, because death isn't gonna go away. Death is waiting for us. It's around the corner. As my teacher Noah Rinpoche used to say, tomorrow when you die, what's your practice? Like, tomorrow when you die, you know, tomorrow when we die, what's the plan? It's just, I know this sounds like real easy. And it's not, of course it's not easy, but I've thrown everything into this, and I've said that, like, if this is true, if all the shit I'm reading and practicing and hearing from teachers is true, then I'm going to figure out for myself what's up, and that's what I've done. It's what I continue to do. Um, to be in the world where, to have the space to hold both the joy and the sorrow together. Like, for me, that's enough for me, quite honestly, to be able to do that. I don't need to erase sorrow or anything. I just want to hold everything. That's all I practice for. Like, of course, to get free and awaken, right? But just to get to the place where everything is held. I mean, that I am not being consumed by the world, but my practice is now consuming the world, consuming the chaos. The trauma doesn't consume me, I consume the chaos. Like the sorrow doesn't consume me, I consume the chaos. The fierceness, and this is what Mother Harriet teaches us. You know, you know, this question from David, right? Harriet had no fear of death because Harriet knew what she was, and she realized that at a young age. She knew that she was this awakened being. She knew that she was a bodhisattva. She knew that she had chose to come back and take form. She had taken many different forms before. This is what bodhisattvas do. They take on many different forms, and she realized that she was like, "Oh, I'm not a black slave woman. I've chosen this form to do the work of liberation, but this isn't who I am." Because she realized that she had this power to move through the world and to do things, you know. And that's what we're practicing for is to realize who we are. And that's where the real consumption of the world begins. When you're like, you know what, I'm not this trauma. I'm not this sadness. I'm not this intensity. I'm not this like intense political moment. I'm not the pettiness. I'm not the anger. I'm not the rage. I'm actually space itself. I'm actually an emanation of space and energy and emptiness. And to take refuge in that instead of the trauma. Right? Because that's how trauma becomes disrupted. Ultimately, is that we remember there's space for this energy to be. And once we remember that there's space, the energy starts releasing. You know, once we let go of the fixation and we start opening and expanding, we release all this that's been trapped inside in these cycles, in our experience. And to have the courage to let it go. This is the this is the what is the word? Not the game of the carceral state, but these are the game rules of the carceral state. And you have to realize that we perpetuate the carceral state samsara by believing that we have to play by the rules. And you have to start divesting from that. You need to start playing by the rules of awakening, of space, of expansion, of fluidity, of movement, of joy. You know. Okay. Space, 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 space. Right? The knowingness is the experience of space, is the decentering of the sense of I, dissolving it over and over again into space itself. And again, fear keeps us from expanding into space because we don't know what space is. And plus, we have created the illusion of comfort in contraction. We think we're safe contracting, in fact, we're actually the most unsafe contractor. To open instead of shut down is the path. To open, to expand. And then everything just becomes waves riding over the ocean of the mind. Everything rises from the ocean, everything returns to the ocean. That is the nature of the mind. Is that everything that rises from the mind will always return back to the mind. You stop being afraid of so much when you stop being afraid of dying. Right? And that's, for those of us on the path of martyrdom, that's how martyrdom has to begin. Is like we have to stop being afraid of dying, and understand who we are, you know. Anyway, thank you all so much. Again, we're going to take a break next week, so I will not be able to practice next week. But I will see you again somewhere in some venue. For those of you who are practicing consuming the world, you know the schedule. I'll see you all on Saturday. Okay, so thank you everyone, and hopefully we'll have some dates for you about some more upcoming events for Lumis Parsha this week. Okay, thank you everyone. Please be well. Please remember to practice. Remember to ask for the help that you need. Remember that you're not alone. That you have to ask for help. Stop struggling alone. Ask for help. Pray. If you want to be an abolitionist, you need to pray. Right? Pray for the help you need. Pray for the help others need, and allow the world to arrange itself to help you. The world will arrange itself. You will shape the phenomenal world in the same way Harriet Tubman did, Sojourner Truth, all the great ones said. They prayed, and the world shaped itself around their will. Remember that you can ask for what you need. And that's my prayer for all of you, that you remember in your most desperate moment, in your greatest intense fear, that you can awaken and ask for help. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.